Okay, we're going to do a similar thing like we did with the plate. We're just going to go bigger. So I've got a 14-inch bat. And I've got about 7.5 or 8 pounds of clay. So we just need we just need to center this lump of clay. And then we're going to push it all the way out close to the edge of the bat. So once again, we're going to just lean in with our right palm and just rotate it towards us. And we'll do that one more time. So we're out there within a 1/2 inch of the edge of the bat. Now we're compressing the clay. And then we can come back and do the same thing with the rib. So as we were moving that clay out, we've left a really nice, healthy bead out on the rim. So we're going to take that, and once again, we just need to get underneath from on the outside. Start bringing that up. And being very careful not to dig down and to make sure that this inside edge here remains level. And with the amount of clay that we have, we can go ahead and take that outside rim. We can bring that up. About like that. So now while it's easy to access, I'm going to go ahead and cut a little groove for the wire. One thing I haven't mentioned in, I don't think in any of these videos, is I tend to use clay that's a little on the softer side. It's nice to be able to get it centered, pull it out, but I've got to be very careful now when I lay out that, excuse me, when I lay out this rim now and keep it at that 45-degree angle, I have to be careful that I don't lay it out too far. So we're going to make sure we've got some moisture. We can take the rib, come over and about halfway up. I think we'll slow the wheel down a little bit. So now with the square edge of the rib and holding with the left hand, we can come and define that rim. So I'm just going to come back with the rib and just lean right up to that juncture and make sure that's a nice crisp edge. And we'll just smooth round off the rim just a little. And there you have it. We're out a little bit away. We're a little bit wider than the 14-inch bat. So this is a tricky move on this particular wheel. It's a little bit, I don't have much room this way, but I do have room this way. So if we can see, I'm going to go ahead and take the wire. And on this particular wheel, I'm going to come in, since I've got room over here. And cut it off the bat. Okay, so that's that. Now on these larger platters, I like to attach handles. So I need to put handles and I need to trim the foot. But I need to get those handles on before the rim dries too much. So we're actually going to put the handles on before we trim. And then we'll show you then what is required to be able to do the trimming process. So I happen to have a Lazy Susan here in the studio. I'm not sure my wife knows that it's out here, but makes it a little easier. We're just going to use a Lazy Susan. So here's a leather hard platter. And these particular bats that I'm using, they have dots on the edge to be able to line up the holes for the pins. So I can use those dots for reference. So I like to just use the rib and be able to measure. So I'm going to go down about that far. And then with a fettling knife, we're going to just cut that section out. And we'll just clean that up while we can get to it. So I don't know if you can tell, you know, it's leather hard, but it's definitely stiff enough that by cutting it and by adding to it, I'm not going to be distorting it. So having it be a pretty good leather hard. So there's one. Let's see, we're going to use that again. Okay, so where I'm going to be attaching the handles are just out on these points here. So I'm going to score those just a little. Okay, so I've rolled out some coils, and we don't want these to be wimpy. We don't want these to be too small for a platter this size. So I'm keeping them about hot dog thickness. Now I happen to have, I just had a piece of plaster, and all I did was just take a trimming tool, just kind of lined up with a ruler, and I just cut several grooves in this piece of plaster. So I'm just going to hold on to this, and I'm just going to roll. So we end up getting kind of a Tootsie Roll kind of design. So there's those two. And now, just to clean up the edges a little bit, the way the size that rib makes, if I clean these edges, and then if I'm just right at about the size of a fettling knife, I know that's the size to be able to span that gap. Okay, so now we can take and score these edges just a little bit. We're going to just press that in place and then just stretch it over. Might be a little bit that can fold over the back to help support. Now, if this was too soft, sometimes I just take the cutouts, and when I set this over on a table, if I needed to, you could just support that, hold it for a day to make sure it didn't kind of droop down any. Okay, so we've got our handles connected. So now I would just cover that back up and let the moisture equalize, let those handles set. But the base is still pretty soft. Obviously, the rim is going to dry out before the base. So now another day or two later, when it'll actually pop off of the bat, when it's leather hard enough, then so now we need to trim a foot on a platter that already has handles. So when we turn this over, so here's the trick. On a bat, I just centered a large lump of clay, somewhere 8 or 10 pounds. So we get it centered. And then we open all the way to the bat, and we just pull out and make a really thick, heavy donut. So basically what we're doing is we're making our own chuck. We're making a homemade adjustable chuck. So the thing that's nice about this is I can adjust it, I can change it for different sizes. For example, on this one, if I were to bring this one in just a little bit, if I had a larger size vase that had a very narrow neck, that it might be hard to just hold it in place, I could just take this and just set it, and I would be able to trim and be able to hold it on the outside all the way around. Now, what we haven't talked about yet is that I don't want the clay to stick to that, so I just need to cover this with paper towel. So we're just going to go halfway around with that one. And halfway around with that one. My goal is simply to be able to support the platter and have it up high enough that the handles aren't going to hit on the wheel. Okay, so this is nice and leather hard. I'm not going to distort it, and we're going to just hold it in place right here. Okay, so that's pretty good right there. So now we can hold it in place. And we can come in and trim a traditional foot. This is why we start with so much clay, and to make sure that the base doesn't get too thin, that we have a good, healthy, at least a ½ inch. And we're just going to come over to about there. And cut in for the foot. And then we're just going to take a small amount out of the interior. See if that's that rock. No, it's gone. Just burnishing, smoothing, rounding off the edges. We're just going to give our defining line, one on the outside, and one on the inside. So that's how we're able to trim a traditional foot, even though we put the handles on at the right time so that we didn't have to worry about the rim getting too dry.